everyone, I'm Kevin, otherwise known as Forum BX257, here to bring you another 1980s G.I. Joe tour review. And for my second Iron Grenadiers theme month, I'm going to be taking a look at Destro's special insertion team, the 1989 TARGAT, which stands for Trans-Atmospheric Rapid Global Assault Trooper. Now, these guys don't make any comic book appearances in the old Marvel comic run, but they make their first animated appearance in the 1989 DiC animated 5-part miniseries Operation Dragonfire in Part 1.
Taking a look at the TARGAT's accessories first, he comes with his primary weapon. As you can see, it's actually kind of clamped to his wrist there. And it is what the contents list on the card calls a laser gun. Now, this is actually a very small pistol for his main weapon. And as you can see, it is made out of gold plastic. But it's a flexible gold plastic so it doesn't succumb to gold plastic syndrome, which is where this thing would be really brittle and kind of easy to crack and break into tiny pieces. However, the wrist clamp, I guess, has a habit of wanting to go straight, or at least the cord does. So it can be a little bit difficult for it to stay onto his wrist or his arm. And if it doesn't, I wouldn't really fool around with this because, well, then you're straining it anyway, and there's a possibility that it'll break anyway. Next, he comes with the contents list calls a joystick. Now, the joystick is attached by the standard G.I. Joe hose. It's about 6 inches long, and it's attached to his backpack on another peg like there. Now, the joystick, I would have thought would have gone like this, with the base at the bottom, but all the pictures I've ever seen have it facing this way. Kind of a shame, but I kind of like the look. It looks like this. It looks more like a joystick. It's actually kind of strange that this doesn't come with a wrist clamp. You would think that you wouldn't want the control arm for your jetpack to, fall out of your hands for some reason, but it doesn't. And finally, we have what the contents list on the card calls a shell. That's right. They're not calling this thing a backpack or jetpack, I should say. Has a lot of really nice detail on here, especially on the back where you don't necessarily see it because the figure covers it. But as you can see, it has a little sculpted in ammo box and a trailing belt up to a barrel. When it's on the figure, I'm guessing this portion just fires over his shoulder. That's actually fairly interesting. So I guess that little pistol wasn't really his only armament. But one thing that you can do is you can spread the geared wings, and now it's a glider. Now you notice I don't really call this thing a jetpack either, because even though it does have jet exhaust here, it's actually on the top of the backpack rather than underneath, where you would think that most of the thrust should be if you're going this way. But there's actually a reason for this. In the file card, it is mentioned that he is deployed from orbit. So basically he falls through the atmosphere, rather a lot like a high altitude, low opening paratrooper. But in this case, he uses this as a heat shield against the atmosphere. On the file card, that's exactly how he uses it. That is basically his heat shield, and then it opens up into a hand glider. Basically, he doesn't use the wings when he's falling. He uses it like this, falling through the atmosphere, and that's what these jets are probably for, just to slow his descent. And when he gets to a probable height for attack, then he deploys the geared wings and glides to his target. As a matter of fact, it's actually better illustrated, oddly enough, in Dave Dorman's American Hero book, where he did artwork for pre-production for Hasbro. And here he did pre-production work for the TARGAT, and you can clearly see in the background that's how they do it. He's sort of scrunching himself up into the backpack and using that as the heat shield before deploying the wings and then popping out like this. And last but not least, he comes with a visor. Again, I would say that this was probably something that he would use during the re-entry process. And then when he pops out his glider and is ready to attack his targets, that's when he pops this thing open and you see, well, another face shield over that. You can take the visor off. It isn't pre-assembled in the package anyway. Now as you can see, this is what his head sculpt looks like without the visor obscuring most of it. And unlike a lot of other figures like the 1989 Alley Viper and Night Viper, the pegs on the side of his head are actually kind of sturdy and thicker. So I'm not really worried about the pegs on the side of his head breaking off. I can't help but really like the TARGAT's color scheme and his overall sculpt. Especially his helmet with the visor and that pop of gold, which with his overall black color scheme and his pops of red and blue, even though blue isn't really a traditional Iron Grenadiers color, the red, black, and gold actually is. It's actually kind of funny that the gold is actually kind of hidden underneath there until you raise his main visor. But it's such a practical looking outfit, and it's really just done so much justice by the colors that they've used. And it's also really nice that he is one of the few figures that actually has the Destro logo. If I can zoom in here. The Destro logo on him. A lot of figures don't, and I'm not really sure why. Of course, he has a lot of nice little stitch work all over his outfit, just to emphasize that this is a heavily padded outfit. Again, that goes along with the whole idea that he's falling through the atmosphere, generating a lot of friction and heat. So he has to have that protection. But it doesn't have to be armor at the same time. It can be flexible, so he's maneuverable, just like a pilot or hang glider pilot should be. One thing I was specifically asked to look into when doing the review for the TARGAT was why he has this belt of grenades facing downwards. And the only thing that I can come up with is it doesn't really serve any practical purpose, but it's just there to emphasize the fact that he is not supposed to be vertical all the time. When he's using his shell heat shield thing, he's supposed to be kind of upside down and sort of crouched around here. I think that's what the upside down grenades are supposed to represent. I know a lot of people tend to think of the TARGATs as being jetpack troopers for Destro, and there's nothing wrong with that, especially with the look of his heat shield glider-like backpack. It really does look like a jetpack, to be perfectly honest. But in the same year that the TARGAT was released, we also have the 1989 Annihilators, who came with a helicopter backpack, or helipack. And these guys are really emphasized to be the airborne and recon troopers on Destro's side. So exactly what role does the TARGAT fill? I think that he fills the high altitude, low opening paratrooper role. So basically, he would be the equivalent to, let's say, the 1990 Freefall. I think these would be really good rivals. But when he gets to the ground and deploys his glider wings, then he becomes the rival of the anti-aircraft guy, the 1989 Backblast. It's funny that I would pick two different rivals for this guy, but he does have two different, very distinct modes to his attack pattern. And here you can see the 1989 Targat with 1988 Destro and the Iron Grenadiers soldiers, and you can see that they go really well together with their overall black color scheme. Now it's true that the Targat does have some very loud pops of color, loud blue, and the red isn't quite as deep as it probably should be. But it looks far more like a 1988 figure than it does a fellow 1989 figure, using Dark Lawn and the Annihilator here as examples. If you're looking for a Targat on the aftermarket, you'll be happy to know that he's a very heavily produced figure, and all of his accessories are fairly sturdy, so you should be able to find him complete and intact on the aftermarket fairly easily. But he is also a very popular figure among Iron Grenadiers collectors. A lot of people like army building this guy. Unfortunately, that does run up the price sometimes. But because he's so heavily produced, I would actually argue that you should really wait for a bargain, because he should be able to be found fairly easily. One thing that you do have to look out for, however, and it's kind of an easy fix anyway, is he can be discolored a little bit. He has kind of a light blue plastic head, which, as you know, light blue plastic on Hasbro figures, they tend to yellow a bit. Mine is actually kind of starting to do that on the top here. As you can see, as a contrast to the color of the visor, should be the same color, but it isn't anymore. Same thing with the backpack. The backpack is being a light gray, it can discolor as well on the top. But that's an easy fix with a bit of hydrogen peroxide. Taking a look at the Targat's accessories first, we have his as you can see, the Targat actually, all of his accessories are very sturdy, so finding him easily on the aftermarket with the... Well, that's all the time I have right now. Please check out my Facebook page for more information and behind the scenes photos for these reviews. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for next time to see another 1980s G.I. Joe toy review. See you then.